So I want to get to my course, my path, my career, and what I want to do with my life. But first, I want to agree with you that I wasn't really trying to say we should get rid of um, the traditional experimental method. That method is a method which provides valid results consistently because it is objective. But the point is, it's a method. Materialism and some forms of scientism, or especially reductionistic fields of science, will look at the experimental method as a metaphysics or some kind of ontological system, so that all that's really important are facts, objective facts. But when we declare that that is the case, subjective feelings and personal experience becomes somehow marginalized, less important, something which, from our own perspectives, our self-conscious perspectives, is the most important thing. Every scientist has a family. Some scientists are even quite religious, though their work may be somewhat reductionistic. I mean, like someone like Richard Dawkins, he's not Christian, but I think he's definitely religious. He has beliefs. They are beliefs which are supported by the particular perspective that he takes when he investigates nature. So they are, in a sense, more rational beliefs. They are beliefs based on a more accurate slicing up of the world into words and descriptions. But he's still basing the assumptions he draws from those um, dichotomies on a mythological way of understanding the world. It's still, in a sense, biblical to assume that there are really these things out there in the world called causes. Um, Even to call consciousness, as in my own consciousness, a cause is nothing but a metaphor, or to call it a noun. For me to be I, and for you to be I, and for those eyes to be separate eyes, is a structure of language. It's grammar. It's a method of conveying information or building technology, because when we can communicate and have standardized systems of measurement, we can build pyramids, or we could build rockets that can land on the moon. Um, but the point is, it's a method and it's not a metaphysic. Science cannot replace religion and spirituality. So whenever I talk about science, I'm not so much trying to criticize uh, science, because a lot of science is based on a valid method. When I talk about science, I merely want to put it into a greater context, because so often people think of science today, and that's the priesthood, and what science says is the truth. And yet in the popular culture, it's maybe quite the opposite. Um, when you think about global warming, the way that the press portray the scientific situation, I don't know what the real consensus of scientists is. It depends what journal you read, I suppose. So science, we're understanding more and more maybe the nature of the scientific paradigm, and that there are always many scientific paradigms, many theories, which within their own range of observation are true, but which contradict one another when looked at, from an outside perspective. So science cannot provide us a metaphysical truth, which is why spirituality sort of moves to the forefront of what we take seriously as human beings. Um, and certainly it shouldn't be a taking of spirituality, like it was taken in the Middle Ages with the Inquisitions and stuff caused by Christianity. That's certainly the priesthood had a certain type of spirituality, or there were mystics in the Catholic priesthood who were as in tune with spiritual realities as one can be, based on Christian scripture, just as Buddhists use Buddhist scripture to attain or realize the same types of experiences. Christians can do it with their scriptures. And, Carl Jung said that we probably should be using the Bible to transform ourselves and not trying to import Eastern religious traditions into our lives, which I understand where he's coming from. And I can see that playing itself out in my life, how I am thoroughly Christian and Jewish and Western and American and English. Uh, and for me to try to incorporate Buddhism into and Taoism and Zen into my Western context and my neuroses and hang-ups that are characteristically Western and that involve a moral tradition that is Christian, whether we call ourselves a secular society now or not. If we are a secular society and we have a morality, well, it's based on religious precepts, on ideas of goodness that are based on Hebrew folklore and Greek philosophy sort of mixed together. And for me to try to be a Buddhist is interesting. It's a struggle, unlike the struggle maybe for, like, think of the Dalai Lama's life, and obviously he was chosen, and maybe there's something to the whole reincarnation process which takes place, and the recognition of the next incarnation of the Lama before they even know the child is born. They just know where to find them, and when they do find them, the Lama seems to know. And so maybe there is something to that, but the point is, the Dalai Lama was raised in a spiritual community from the time he was a small child. He went to school to learn the history of a very rich contemplative tradition and a meditative technique, which I think it obviously produces, it evolves human consciousness. And I think that's something that a science of consciousness needs to take very seriously, is the scientific understanding of evolution, biological evolution. Because when we realize that our bodies evolve, we must at the same time recognize the mind has an evolutionary process which it moves through. Consciousness is always changing, and there is not this stable ego self that is always remaining objective. We can pick and create an experimental situation, a laboratory environment, where for a short period of time, within certain confines, we can control the results of an experimental situation and have factual understanding of what will happen in the future and be in total control of what's going on. But it's always a temporary illusion. It's a method. You're basically building a machine. You're not finding a truth in nature. You're building a machine which you can predict because you've already measured the entire thing. And so all you have to do is add up the digits. But that's not the phenomenon. That is not your experience. So, really the only thing I can say is that any perspective it should always be a method which allows for evolution And if we get attached to any particular method and that becomes our religion, then it's no longer a method. We've stopped the process of evolution. We've become stagnant and dead.